My talk is on current status of peripheral nerve repair and emerging technologies. So peripheral nerve is a complex organ. You know, it's fragile, dynamic, it's variable. It's not just simple cable of wires. And its fascicular and even vascular architecture varies from the same limb. More proximally, the fascicles are smaller and tightly bundled, and more vascular, more distally. They're larger, a little more variable, and the vascular supply is less, which is more prone to ischemia. And given its anatomy, it makes sense why nerve recovery is less predictable in certain cases. The impact of peripheral nerve injury is quite significant. In the US, at least more than 55,000 ED cases, but this is probably underreported because some of those injuries are documented later on. But the economic impact is significant. In 2019, it was $4.2 trillion in the US, with the brachial plexus costing almost $840,000 per patient. But in India, Europe, it's quite significant. This is not even doing justice to India. This is a transportation data which shows 5 to 10,000, but it's an immense magnitude in India, which is not reported. And I think the importance of really understanding nerve recovery and getting it better is a lot of these patients are young, they're men, they're working age, and their families depend on them to bring bread home. So really understanding and improving nerve recovery brings them immense satisfaction. We know that the mechanism and type of nerve injury is the most important prognostic indicator. Therefore, just understanding the nature of the injury is important. Sutton and Sunderland classified this categories, and we sort of intervene when it's 3 to 5, Sunderland stage. Understanding this allows us to pool our experience and improve patient care and overall nerve recovery. We know Wallerian degeneration, we see it quite often. It's orderly breakdown of the distal axons and myelin. When the nerve is cut, the Schwann cells and the macrophages get to work, they clear the debris, and then they work with bands of Bunger to regrow the axons. So timely repair is important, but I think understanding this at a basic science level allows us to affect the biology of nerve repair. And especially with all the big cases that were presented, really understanding this biology is what the next sort of wave is for us to improve nerve repair in these cases. Nerve injuries, we know that when patients younger, sharper wound, earlier repair, and a direct repair gives us the best outcome. I think other than that, we're sort of doing our best and dealing with the circumstances and the clinical picture. The current techniques are direct end-to-end repair, which is ideal. I know nerve conduits and wraps, they are common outside of India. I know we use them for certain conditions. We don't always use autografts, and there are some limitations. Nerve allografts are also useful in certain situations, but autologous nerve grafting is the gold standard. More proximal injuries, nerve transfers are ideal, and we're working with biologics to see how we can improve these. So when I look at nerve improvement in nerve care, sort of categorize it as what the problem is. And I think if you think of scar and fibrosis and ischemia, that creates one problem of a block of conduction. The other one is misdirection and fascicular mismatch. And when we have that, it leads to poor recruitment of the end plates. It leads to a poor outcome, and that's where nerve recovery is limited. We can't get the ideal improvement because we're not able to ideally match what the recipient nerve is. Nerve repair is also time sensitive. So while the nerve is waiting to improve, motor end plates and Schwann cells die. And again, that's another area where trying to get that to heal faster would lead to a better outcome. And then the biology is something that we are improving to gain better nerve function. So direct end-to-end repair, we know that gives the best outcome. There's some basic rules of a good coaptation. One is a tension-free repair. And in order to get a tension-free repair, you have to mobilize the nerves proximally and distally. Preparation nerve endings is also important. This is a electron microscopy image of a nerve that's cut with an 11 blade versus a scissors. And you can see that the nerve fascicles at the coaptation site get crushed. You lose some fascicular architecture. And as basic as this is, I think it's important to remember that because every small step helps in a better nerve recovery. And to minimize internuclear scarring, cutting the nerve properly in a sharp fashion, meticulous handling of the nerve, using longitudinal vessels to reorient the nerve fascicles as good as possible is ideal. We want to minimize the sutures, and as far as the type of repair, I think there's limited evidence, but we know that in mixed motor nerves, probably epiperineural repair is ideal. When it comes to nerve gap, the general consensus is if primary repair is not possible, less than 10 to 15 millimeters, nerve conduits are comparable. We do use nerve allograft. I think this is a debate, but up to 2.5 centimeters have shown. But the gold standard is still nerve autograft, and especially outside in the US, we do use nerve allograft because there's donor site morbidity. The nerve wraps provide a protective barrier around repair or decompressed nerves. Again, when we're trying to affect the biology, the reducing adhesions, fibrosis, enhancing nerve gliding, perhaps does improve the conduction, and preserving the microenvironment integrity is also important. There are nerve wraps with tacrolimus. When there are hand transplants and these patients are given tacrolimus, it's been shown that the nerve healing is augmented. So in a similar fashion, a nerve wrap which has a tacrolimus eluting substance perhaps will improve in regeneration of these independent fibers. And it's important that tacrolimus actually is not just an immunosuppressant, but it also has shown an independent effect on accelerating axonal growth. Current evidence with case series and systemic reviews have shown better outcomes with nerve wraps. Certainly there's randomized control studies show that in replants, the neuropathic pain is less in digital replants with a nerve wrap versus the ones that didn't have it. So nerve wraps do have a promising role, especially when we use substances to augment the biology, and something to keep in mind. For revision cases of carpal tunnel, cubital tunnel, there are some studies that have shown improved outcomes, but there's still more randomized control trials needed. So what's in the horizon? I think we're trying to figure out what's next for nerve recovery so we can really have predictable outcomes, and from drug-eluting wraps that we just talked about to 3D printing conduits, implantable nerve stimulators, PEG fusion is of new interest. There are current trials going on. And then all the biology adjuncts, stem cell therapies, Schwann cells, growth factors, exosomes. And none of them have really proven, but I think in the next several years, we'll start to understand more. So for the next 1 to 3 years, what are we looking at? Well, there are studies, brief perioperative stimulation has shown some promise in accelerating axonal regeneration. It's typically 20 hertz for about an hour applied proximal to the lesion and decompress or the area of decompression. The challenges are, it's not really available yet. It's not practical, and we don't really have single-use stimulators to be implanted. But there's enough evidence to show that electrostimulation helps nerve growth. In fact, the previous talk where the nerve was growing around the implant is proof that nerve does respond to electrical stimulation. Several human randomized control trials have shown some promise. ES has improved sensory recovery after digital and median nerve repairs. In double-blind randomized control trials, compressive neuropathy, such as cubital tunnel, has shown a better outcome. We talked about the nerve wraps. Certainly, I think they do have a role, especially now in the near future. There's enough evidence to know that they're safe, and perhaps if we are wrapping them and there's less perineural fibrosis, improved nerve gliding, we can improve nerve function. So in the mid-70s, PEG was first used as a membrane fusogen for cell hybrids by suspending 2 cell lines in PEG solution. And then in 1986, Bittner and Associates, they fused severed crayfish giant axons with PEG. And that was sort of the first time that we saw PEG as a role in nerve function. And it's a basic chemical process that fuses axonal membranes, and hopefully before Wallerian degeneration can take place. And by doing that, it'll establish action potentials immediately. And the process is intra-op. First is the severed nerve endings are freshly prepared. And while it's bathed with calcium-free copious solution, which is hypotonic, the nerve endings are repaired. Once nerve endings are repaired, there's methylene blue is given to limit the vesicle formation, and subsequently, topical PEG is given to fuse the axonal membranes. And after it's fused, it's washed with a isotonic calcium saline to stop the fusion. And there's actually, the challenge with PEG fusion is that it needs to be done very early in the process, and it's not always feasible that a nerve injury comes in and you're taking it immediately at every case. So that's one thing. But there's early randomized human data in digital nerve lacerations that suggest faster early sensory recovery. And currently there are ongoing clinical trials which are hashing out the appropriate indication, the dosage, and I think this may be a promising way for us, especially a lot of the acute trauma, to improve nerve recovery. I think the gaps for us are, there's a lot of preclinical results that don't always translate to human trials. The outcome measures are also variables, so I think over time how to assess that becomes challenging. And tissue engineering, biologics, they all are experimental at this level. But I think the upcoming years are exciting. So I would say in conclusion, peripheral nerve repair remains challenging, but it has made advances over the past decades. I think collaboration between scientists, engineers, surgeons is key to really, as a group, improve this problem. And I would say combination therapies and personalized approaches, AI will probably play a role, and integration with regenerative medicine will be important. Thank you.